right, good evening. This is Ubuntu channel, and the program is Meet Your Leaders. Tonight on the show, we'll actually be joined by the Justice Minister, Mr. Mulambo Haimbe. Every Wednesday, just like any other Wednesday, 9 p.m. to 10 p.m., your host, my name is Chaza, and I do co-host with Lance right here on your favorite program. Good evening, Lance.
Good evening, Chaza. How are you doing today?
I'm doing pretty fine. You look like a pilot.
Well, in life, we choose what we want to be. And today I want to be a pilot, piloting this program, of course.
Oh, yes, indeed. It's a lovely thing to have you on the show, just like any other Wednesday evening.
Definitely. And it's great to be here. Looking forward to the wonderful interaction and deliberations that we will have with our guests this evening. Very super excited and waiting to have a nice conversation.
Oh, yes, indeed. And tonight we are looking at law reforms and the state of the judiciary in Zambia. And I'm pretty excited because some of the questions that we've had on previous shows, I must believe that will be answered by the Minister of Justice tonight, Mr. Mulambo Haimbe. Mr. Haimbe, good evening and welcome to the program.
Good evening, Lance. Good evening, colleagues, Chaza, everyone. It's great to be here after an interesting day of service. Good evening for those that are joining us online. I'm ready for those discussions.
We are profoundly humbled for you according us this chance to be on the show, and you've spared your time off your busy schedule. We do not take that one for granted, sir.
Great. We are always say as New Dawn governments, as the New Dawn government, that ours is servant leadership. So I'm actually thankful and grateful to you for affording me this platform, and also to the viewers who've taken time to listen to what we have to say. Obviously, others would want to be resting this time. So I equally do not take this opportunity for granted.
Thank you so much. On previous programs, previous shows, we've had questions that remained unanswered, and we envisage that such questions, because you are here as the Minister of Justice, they will definitely be answered, especially those that allude to corruption, investigations, and the outcomes of the court. First of all, this time around, so I would like to find out from you, what is the mandate and the role or the core business of the Ministry of Justice?
Yes, thank you very much. In a nutshell, the Ministry of Justice is tasked with the responsibility of managing matters relating to, first of all, legislative enactment of laws. So what happens is that you have the line ministries. For example, Ministry of Home Affairs has got certain portfolios that it looks after. So you'll find that ours is there to service other ministries. So your Ministry of Home Affairs would be in charge of administering the Public Order Act, for example. So if there is an amendment to that act that is to come, it would be the Ministry of Justice that would provide the experts, the technical expertise to draft that piece of legislation and take all the necessary steps to see it up to the floor of the House. But in terms of the content, it has to come from the line ministry. The line ministry instructs. So basically, the Ministry of Justice is the lawyer for the government of the Republic of Zambia, if I can put it in layman's terms. So in the Ministry of Justice, you have myself as the head, the policy head, and then we have constitutional office holders. It's very unique. The Attorney General, who is under the Constitution the chief legal advisor to the government of the Republic of Zambia, and the Solicitor General, who is his assistant. Then we have the permanent secretaries, and we are not public-facing per se. Ours is to service other ministries and other institutions and the government generally. Also, in terms of the New Dawn government, we are the custodians of one of the key pillars on which the New Dawn government wants to administer the affairs of this country, which is the governance pillar. And also, of course, we are custodians of the public interest insofar as legal matters are concerned. We liaise on behalf of the executive arm of government with the judiciary. We are the first point of call, and we do actually lobby for funds for the judiciary through the budgeting process. But you must learn, and many people don't know this, or they assume that the Ministry of Justice is able to tell the judiciary what to do, or where there is an injustice in the way that they've been treated in court. They believe that Minister of Justice will come in and step in and tell those that are administering the particular case, as it were, that please take it in this direction. Actually, the Minister of Justice has got no say in the way in which the judiciary conducts its core business. So the judiciary is an independent arm of government completely, and it's only that we have administrative connections between ourselves and that arm of government. So I think I'll pause there because it would take a very long time to mention each and every aspect of what the Ministry of Justice does.
All right, thank you so much. Would like to. I like the aspect that you have brought in, that it's a lawyer, some kind of a lawyer for the government, and you've also tackled the aspect of the outcomes of the courts, that people are expecting that the ministry or the minister should indulge into some of the outcomes that are perceived not to be what the people have had expected. As regards the rule of law and separation of powers, where are we? Because we are seeing that, yes, indeed, the public perception is seemingly disappointed as regards the status, the judicial status currently. What is the perspective of government and the Ministry of Justice on this issue?
Okay, so as I said earlier, and I think we must always keep in mind that the judiciary is an independent arm of government, as you've rightly pointed out, under the separation of powers and under the provisions of the Constitution. The courts of law are self-governing and they are independent and impartial. So ours is to create an environment in which those particular independent institutions can operate and thrive freely. So in the justice delivery process, there are several players depending on which side you are. There's the state, the executive arm of government, which could be represented in civil proceedings by the Attorney General, and the Attorney General is sued in a representative capacity. I think the general public is more concerned with criminal proceedings in which the state is represented by the Director of Public Prosecutions, acting on behalf of the people of Zambia. Then you would have, of course, those are the prosecutors. Then you have the defense attorneys, who come from private practice and also from the Legal Aid Board, which is also a function under the Ministry of Justice. Then you have the judiciary as the decider of the dispute between the two parties. So insofar as public perception is concerned, the people need to understand that in the process of criminal investigation, which I think is the topical issue, it starts with investigation. Investigation takes place through the law enforcement agencies, DEC, Zambia Police, Anti-Corruption Commission. These people do the investigation, and when they find that there is evidence enough to support a what we call a prima facie case, a charge against an individual, they push the docket to the National Prosecutions Authority, which is the DPP and her people, and the DPP makes an assessment, and then it goes to court for prosecution. This is where the other side comes in and says, I get a lawyer to defend me. And ultimately, the court then decides whether a person is innocent or guilty. That is
It appears we have lost the
how the process goes.
minister.
And every one of those stages has got a particular process it follows, and of these matters. As government, we respect the independence of the judiciary. Of course, we are alive to public sentiment, and it is our duty to facilitate a situation or an environment in which public sentiments are addressed. And it is, however, within only the judiciary itself which can say we want reforms, which is the question I think that you're asking. At this point, is the need for reforms. I think you would have seen that we as the New Dawn government have been very clear from the word God that there is need for judicial reform. That is beyond question. Why do we say that? It's because we have been able to make an assessment of the various levels in the court system, subordinate court, high court, and the superior courts. The superior courts being the High Court, Court of Appeal, Constitutional Court, and Supreme Court. It's quite evident that there is need for a refreshing of how these institutions operate inter se amongst each other and in the interest of the general public. So for us, we want to create an environment where the judiciary decides on its own the reforms that it will take. And you will see that the process of reform has actually begun in one way or the other. For instance, there were recently transfers in the judicial system at magistrate court level in Lusaka. And I was asked very recently on one of the other programs, why reshuffles in the judiciary? But then I laughed and said, but you are looking at it from one perspective. You have to understand that even in local government, we've had reshuffles. All the town clerks that were basically in various towns have been moved around. And it just comes with a new administration, so that people who may have been perhaps in a particular comfort zone, or who may not have been diligently exercising their functions, could have a fresh opportunity to exercise those functions properly in a different area. So it's a normal function of the process of reform and the process of a new dispensation coming into play.
All right. Before forming government, and now that you are in government, yes, the mandate of PF has been to have these law reforms. But I would like to find out, because for you to envisage law reforms, it means that you have seen these bad laws or bad provisions of the law or the mischief. What is it what are the bad areas? Maybe if you may highlight some of them that have prompted these law reforms that are in contemplation, and those that you have even embarked on.
Thank you very much, Chaza, for that question. I think maybe a point of clarification is that it's not necessarily that you'll be saying that laws are bad as a carte blanche sort of approach to it. Reform, legal, judicial, constitutional, and electoral reform is absolutely necessary, because the law is a living sort of process, if I may call it that. It's not static. And anyone who would say that the law is static would not be alive to the fact that with societal changes, with societal growth, the law must also be flexible and must move with society. And part of the reason we are saying we need reform is because for a very long period, our laws have not been responsive to the needs of the people of Zambia, to the aspirations of the people of Zambia. What do I mean by this? You can select, for example, a couple of statutory provisions before we talk about the Constitution. Look at certain acts of parliament. The much talked about Public Order Act has been used in the past in a way that is suppressive to democracy and your and my freedom. So for us, we look at that and say, let's be progressive. Let's not just think about the now. Let's think about the future, our children, our children's children, and their children. We must have provisions which would enhance and entail that those future generations are guaranteed a Zambia that respects their fundamental rights, and a Zambia that would allow them to flourish and to grow. I always, every single time I appear on these platforms, I quote a very important, to me, a profound statement made by His Excellency the President when opening Parliament. He said that a free mind is a productive mind. And for us as the New Dawn government and for us as Ministry of Justice, we take that in a practical sense. We want to create an environment where you and I can enjoy our freedoms responsibly, where you should not feel scared when you're hosting me on Ubuntu a live channel, that someone will come and knock at the door and stop us from having this broadcast. So those are the sort of things that we want to look at and address, both from the black letter law perspective and from the administration, from the way we actually enforce those laws. So you will see that for the first step has already been achieved. The same Public Order Act, which was being used to oppress and suppress Zambians in the recent past, is now being used as a tool for just managing these public processions and events. Look at Kawata by-election, for example. But that does not mean, which was free, everybody enjoyed their rights to participate in that election. But that doesn't mean that we should not change these non-progressive provisions of the law. And this is what we want to do. There are several of them. I'll give another example, like the Penal Code and the Criminal Procedure Code, which provide for certain offenses. We want to look afresh at those and see how we can be more responsive to the needs of the people of Zambia through amendment or enacting new pieces of legislation, such as the Children's Code Bill, which is aimed at protecting the rights of children in the country. I'm very excited. I think we have good times coming ahead.
All right, great. We've seen, like you indicated earlier, the reshuffling of the judges, the magistrates, and probably other court officers. And you have also talked about the being responsive to the needs and aspirations of the people. Could it be that these movements were prompted by the needs or aspirations of the people, seeing that some of the outcomes of the courts and other proceedings have not sat well with the people?
Well, I doubt very much that the outcomes of proceedings would be the basis upon which transfers would be made. I believe it's for administrative convenience. I know for a fact that the judiciary was looking at making these changes well before we had these recent decisions. But even on that, I would like to address that particular aspect. Anyone who's involved in the practice of the law will know, for example, that a couple of these decisions have been based on interlocutory or temporary, shall I call it, sort of applications. For example, the return of property to an accused person is something that we see every day in the practice of the law. To us, it is not new. There may be a time when the court will say, no, I'll not allow the person to get back their property for the time being until the case is determined. And there will be times when the court says, you can keep your property, hold on to it, do not dispose of it, because it's subject of legal proceedings. These are normal sort of orders that are made from day to day. Of course, there will be stories like the outright acquittal of some of the accused persons. We win some, we lose some. We don't know whether there will be an appeal from the law enforcement agencies or not. But imagine if every time there is a decision against the state, a transfer is done, would we ever be able to administer the law in the country? The answer to that question is no, because we have a very limited pool of trained magistrates that are actually serving the country. In fact, we have a short number of both magistrates and judges and other high judicial office holders. So no, certainly I could only consider this to be a reshuffle, as I mentioned earlier, for administrative purposes, so that we see a sort of fresh approach to the way our judicial officers attend to matters. I think, but that is my understanding from the discussions I've had with the judiciary over the same.
All right, we have seen some.
And sorry, maybe just to add, even at high court level, sorry, my apologies to cut you short. Even at high court level, you will have heard that we have had a number of judges that have been moved out of Lusaka. Now, again, if one wants to be speculative and say it's for a particular purpose, those judges have not delivered any decision in the large scheme of things. So it would confirm that the purpose of these changes, these transfers and movements is basically for administrative convenience. These judges, I think there are 5 of them, have been sent to what are being called provincial centers. We are in a process as part of the judicial reform process devolving to the provinces. So you now have high courts in the provincial centers. I think about 5 of them have been established so far. So again, there's no sinister motive to this, but simply trying to be more efficient with the human resource that we have.
Great. We have seen some acquittals, some knowledge that have been so shocking and getting down into some issues. We get to understand that prior to the new dawn, there were some kind of arrangements that were entered into between the Anti-Corruption Commission, that the acquitted would not be prosecuted and so on and so forth. Your reaction as a ministry as regards such arrangements?
Okay, now let me just add some clarity to that. The only acquittal we've seen in relation to charges that are hinged on economic and financial crime or corruption, as the case may be, is I believe we actually have not seen an acquittal in that respect. Today we heard of an acquittal of Honorable Kampyongo in relation to the 2015, I believe it was, attempts to stop a helicopter from landing in Shiwangandu district. That is a separate and distinct issue from the topical issue for the people of Zambia, which is the fight against corruption. In the fight against corruption, the closest to an acquittal that we've heard, and this is subject of appeal, was in relation to the agreement entered between Honorable Chitotela on the one hand, and the Anti-Corruption Commission, pursuant to Section 80 of the Anti-Corruption Commission Act. This was done sometime in 2019 or thereabouts, well before the current dispensation. Now, let's unbundle this a little bit. The Anti-Corruption Act, and this is common across almost all jurisdictions where we have anti-corruption provisions in a statute, a piece of law. It provides in Section 80 that if you and I have involved ourselves in corrupt activity and have gained property as a consequence, we can come clean. Swalombo welelo. We say, no, you know what? This pen that I got, I know that I got it as a proceed of crime in a corrupt sort of activity. I'm willing to give back this pen if you don't prosecute me. It's a very special provision which is only found in the Anti-Corruption Commission Act of 2012. So the Director General of ACC is then given the power to say, yes, I agree that you only have this pen, and once you've forfeited this, we will not prosecute you. This is what happened with Faith Nsonda. This is what Honorable Chitotela allegedly got into, or purportedly got into, with the previous Director General of the ACC, acting Director General, as it were, Ms. Kuzwa. Now, then when we enter that agreement, it's called an undertaking not to prosecute. There are conditions to that. I have to be totally honest when I'm saying this is the only thing that I got, this pen, in a corrupt manner. If I'm not completely forthright, I can still be prosecuted. So this is the issue that was before court over the Ronald Chitotela. The other thing is that when I say I've got this pen and we agree with the Director General that, okay, I'm giving up this pen back to the state, I'm forfeiting it to the state, then we sign that agreement not to, an undertaking not to prosecute in relation to this pen and nothing else. Then that is supposed to be presented before a court of law to sign it. So the argument that was before the lower court over the Chitotela matter was, did he make a complete disclosure? One. If not, what follows? Two, was that agreement binding and valid? And the court said, as far as I'm concerned, there was a valid agreement, so you cannot prosecute Mr. Chitotela, Honorable Chitotela. But now this matter has gone on appeal. The Anti-Corruption Commission has appealed, and the basis that they are saying is that the magistrate was wrong to apply this agreement as though it's to all the property that is owned by Honorable Chitotela, and similarly with other accused persons. and that question is being tested before the court of law. So you'll see from there that these are the sort of legal mechanisms that are available. For the DPP, the law allows the DPP to enter what is called a plea bargain agreement. Now, here you'll be saying, for example, you are charged with murder, and then you say, look, you people, these were the circumstances of the case. Can you allow us to go into a plea bargain? We reduce it to manslaughter according to certain circumstances. The DPP, insofar as our understanding of the Constitution is, does not have authority to say a person cannot ever be prosecuted. What is referred to commonly as an immunity agreement. There is no such power. So these are the aspects that you are seeing now. I want to also point out that many people have said, you know, our colleagues out there are pushing a negative narrative about the fight against corruption. They've said, oh, this fight is going nowhere. There's nothing that's being done. There are a lot of mistakes that are being made. There's no conviction that has been secured. But colleagues, you must understand that in the criminal justice process, there will be three possible outcomes: a conviction, an acquittal, or a nolli prosequi, a discharge, where you just discontinue the proceedings. Now, in these current cases of corruption that are running now before the fast-track courts that have been commenced during the era of the New Dawn government, you will hear that there has not been any acquittal, there has not been any conviction. What does that tell you? It tells you that these cases are ongoing. There has not been any outright decision of a person being found not to be wanting. So we cannot say that the law enforcement agencies, one, are not doing their job properly. We cannot say that the courts are not doing their job properly, because we haven't yet reached that stage. Until and unless we have either a conviction or an acquittal, we cannot reach that conclusion. So I'd like to say that we need to exercise some patience. Financial crimes are very difficult to prosecute because often you hide what you have done as the person who's involved yourself in corrupt activities. So a lot of investigative work has to be done. The prosecution has to be very careful to show the link between the accused person and the properties which they probably would have hidden in the process of conducting themselves in that manner. So we are far from being there yet. I think the chairman designate of the Anti-Corruption Commission, State Counsel Musa Mwene, put it very, very aptly. And this is actually, I quoted him on my status. The battles will be there. These small things you're seeing right now are simply battles. The war has not yet been won, and we are far from getting there quite yet.
Thank you so much, Mr. Haimbe. I am not alone, of course. Hosting this show, I have my colleague, Lance, who is going to take us through as regards the questions in the second round. For now, we get to have a break for a commercial. On the other side, we get to continue with the questions, with this interview with the Minister of Justice. And we shall invite the viewers, the listeners, to come through and participate by means of asking questions or we are right back, and thank you so much for staying with us. At this point in time, I invite my co-host, Lance, to take us through with the questions as we proceed right on the show.
Thank you so much, Chaza. And of course, good evening to the viewers that are just tuning in, joining this particular broadcast. Before I start with my program, with my questions, Chaza, or my set of questions, I believe we already have people in the studio that would love to engage with the minister, express a view share a comment or probably ask their burning question from the already things that have been discussed, and obviously try to get clarity on what they feel the minister has to put clarity on. So for now, let me get to invite people that have joined us in the studio so that we can be able to engage them with the minister. And then on the other side, I will be able to ask my set of questions so that we can continue with the program. For now, let's have Ribat. Okay, so we have Mukelebai in. Good evening.
Good evening. How are you, my brothers? And how are you, Honorable Minister?
We are fine, thank you.
Yes, please. Should I go ahead and ask a question? Yes.
Please, you can go ahead.
Yes, Honorable Muributi.
Unfortunately, I can see internet there trying to hang, but
Okay.
he's back.
Okay, Honorable, I have just one concern. And this is about the information, the flow of information in our country, especially from all the ministries. We are lacking information so far. We are not getting what is going on, what is taking place in our New Dawn government, or what the New Dawn is doing. We just hear when we invite you over for interviews. What is going on? What is happening? Because we see all this information and we can tell from our so-called, from the so-called opposition, they are busy going out spreading false propaganda, telling us about the performance of our New Dawn, that they are not doing their job. They are just there to persecute the opponents. What say you over these sentiments, and how do we, the nation, get information from the government, from people like you who we have empowered or given the authority, the mandate to run the welfare of our country? Because we are in the dark. We are just busy speculating. We don't know what's happening, even from the Ministry of Information point of view. So what say you, Honorable, over these small inches, Talumba?
Thank you so much, Vom Keleba there. The Minister of Justice, Mr. Haimbe, you may take it up.
Okay, thank you. I think that's not the first time that I'm hearing those sentiments regarding the information flow. My own take is that one, there is an information war that is going on currently as we speak. That's the best way I could describe it, and a lot of it is takes place on social media platforms. So as government, I think the focus has been on getting information out through the mainstream channels, if I may use that expression, the mainstream media channels, the newspaper, digital, print, and through the traditional television stations. I think there is need for there to be that gap bridged between the
All right, we seem to be having
Say,
internet challenges.
can you hear me?
Yes,
I was saying, of course, I'm not in a position to speak on behalf of the Ministry of Information and Broadcasting, but I can certainly say that there is need for there to be an improvement, both on the political party side and on the government side, on information flow. On my part, I try as much as possible to bring out information through my various platforms and channels, including having regular briefings and indeed through interactions such as this. But I would say that we are so focused on delivering for the people of Zambia that sometimes we tend to forget that part of the process of delivery is to inform the people effectively on what's going on. But also understand that our colleagues in the opposition, our colleagues who may not agree with our ideologies and theories are very busy. They've got nothing better to do. They've got time on their hands. So they'll be very busy on social media with propaganda, with disinformation, and with trying to make it appear that this government is not doing everything that it can. But if also we take an interest, you find the information is out there. For example, you look at the recent statistics that have been released by the Ministry of Finance, you will learn that Zambia, when we took over not too long ago, 9-10 months ago, was under a 22 point something inflation rate. Now we're looking at 10.2% inflation rate, very quickly running to a single digit. Instead of understanding what this statistic means to ourselves, we listen to the narrative that is being pushed by the opposition, and they say, no, but inflation rate, will it make you full? Will it put food on your table? But the truth of the matter is that when the economic fundamentals start to shift positively, then ultimately in the near future you will see the gains transforming, or what's the word I'm looking for? Translating into direct benefit to the people of Zambia. This is something that perhaps has not been put out there, and I agree with Wom Kelewai to the extent that some of this information must be put in that particular context. Thank you.
All right, thank you so much. Let's see if we can have Ribat. Ribat, hi, good evening. How are you doing? You are muted. Kindly unmute. Yes, we can hear you, though you are breaking. Okay, network seems not to be your best ally. You are still breaking.
Okay.
Yeah, maybe he may try to
you may
say it again. And unfortunately, we can't hear you. So you may try to leave and join us later again. We see if that time around you be through.
All right. So we can also you can also get to click on that link, which is on your Facebook page. We have shared the link in the comments box, and then you can easily join us live in
unfortunately, even Lance, we had lost you. Please just repeat yourself. You were talking about joining us via the link.
Definitely, you can join us via the link that we have provided for you in the comments box, either on YouTube, on Facebook, or better still, you can join us through via Twitter, as you just have to look for Ubuntu channel. We have Nyachisengu in the studio. Nyachisengu, hi, how are you doing?
Good evening, everyone, and congratulations to Minister Haimbe. The last time we spoke, I think it was we were on Munsha's channel, Munsha's program, and I still have your phone number, by the way, so I'm going to give you a call someday, unless you've changed it. So what I'm going to talk about today is a few things that we've seen happening in Zambia. The ACC. I'm worried about the investigations that the ACC are actually carrying out, to be honest with you, whether they are doing a fantastic job or not, you know, because we've seen a lot of cases going to court. And of course, you hear it through the grapevine, or you hear it through Twitter or whatever, right? That, you know, we see somebody goes in today, the other one, I mean, tomorrow they're out. Yes, they have to be bailed. I understand that. But are they going to be prosecuted later on? There was some tweet today. I'll just read it quickly out here. Will any individual from the former ruling party ever be prosecuted for many crimes committed by the Lungu admin? Day by day, I lose faith in the Zambian justice system. Can you see where this is going? They're already losing faith in the justice system. And and I'm sure you're here to answer some of those questions. We want to, and you also talked about inflation rate quickly running to a single digit here. That's fantastic. It's good for me and you to know that. But what about the people on the grassroots? Do they understand what inflation rate means? How are you making sure that this information gets to the right people? Well, those are my questions. Thank you.
All right, thank you so much, Sengu, for that. Let's accommodate one last person, Mwinga, and then we get to have our guest respond to the questions that have been brought forward. Let's have Mwinga in the studio. Mwinga, hi, how are you doing today? Mwinga, good evening. We are unable to get you, Mwinga. Good evening. All right, we seem to have a problem with Mwinga. Honorable Minister, you can respond to those questions, and then on the other round, we'll have Chipindani asking the questions on the other round. But for now, Justice Minister, you can respond.
Okay, now let me make this again absolutely clear for the avoidance of any doubt. Okay, one, like I mentioned, I'll repeat myself, but perhaps I'll change the context a little bit. I'll try and be quick. There is a narrative that is being pushed out there by certain sections of society that want to make it appear like the fight against corruption is being bungled, that it's not being properly done. And that narrative is completely wrong. Part of it that's being fueled is because as Zambians, we've become very, very speculative, and we've become information hungry. And we take this information off the social media platforms without having a full and proper knowledge of what's going on. The practice of law and the practice of criminal justice in particular is a very specialized area, which some lawyers don't even understand, let alone an untrained person. So, for example, just now I can give an example of what Nyachisengu just said, and with of course due respect, without taking anything away from what she has said. She gave the sentiment that people are getting bail. Does that mean that we lose trust in our criminal justice process because we don't know whether these people will be prosecuted at all? There is a completely different aspect of what has got to do with freedom, a pending trial, and ultimate conviction. A person that gets bail is by no means, or even police bond, is by no means determined as being innocent in any way, or they've escaped the arm of the law. That is just a mechanism by which the justice system tries to secure persons from escaping criminal liability or escaping court processes by running away. The whole essence of holding people in custody for pending their hearing of their cases is just so that they are in safe hands and they do not escape the long arm of the law illegally. And so there is a complete legal process of granting bail, and perhaps maybe it's where we are coming from, where bail was a big issue. Because of the way our colleagues in the past decided to administer the justice system. Bail was used as a means of, denial of bail was used as a means of punishing a person contrary to the provisions of the law, which say you are innocent until proven guilty. We as the New Dawn are saying we respect the rule of law. So if it's a bailable offense, go out there. As long as we can trace you, as long as you meet the bail conditions, you'll come back and face trial. Now, where are we in these processes that we're undertaking? Please, I reiterate, nobody has been acquitted from this New Dawn administration cases that have been started. There's nobody that has been acquitted, okay? What you are seeing are temporary sort of decisions. It's like an injunction. I get an injunction today, it's challenged in court tomorrow, then the court can rule either way. So please, let the people of Zambia not make the mistake of saying that there is a problem with investigations, or that there is a problem with the trial of these individuals, or even that there is a problem with the way the ACC and other law enforcement agencies are doing their work. That is farther from the truth than could be possible, because you have not seen any final decision by which a person has been acquitted. What you have seen is the same accused persons and their cronies, the people that they associate with, coming and saying nobody will be convicted from amongst these people because we still control the courts. I've seen on social media an allegation to the effect that a senior party member from the PF has said that. But is he God? Are these not the same people who 10 months ago were saying, let's not forget as Zambians where we have come from and be fooled by these sort of narratives. These are the individuals who were on TV every day and every night saying the UPND can never win, the UPND is a regional party, the UPND are useless, the UPND can never form government. That is the sort of narrative that they are used to push in. And that is the mindset we have gotten used to as Zambians. From that sort of talk, we have not yet dissociated ourselves from the 10 years of abuse that we've undergone. So when you have a whole bunch of people talking today, a so-called bulldozer is saying, hey, tamwa kwa tene nsapato, kuti mwansenda shani, tamwa kasende po ifintu fiandi, ingandandi nsenda. People believe that that is the correct narrative. And you must understand that the law enforcement agencies, the courts and ourselves who are involved in the criminal justice and the justice process generally cannot put certain information out into the public domain. You will never prosecute a case in the public domain if it's going to the court of law. So on the one hand, you have this bunch of people who are talking constantly and giving a narrative that there's nowhere that this fight is going. And on the other, the law enforcement agencies cannot speak about these matters because they are going into court. You can't prosecute a case in the public domain. So they are taking advantage of that, the fact that there is that requirement not to speak of these matters in the public domain, and they are twisting a particular narrative. But for us, I've given you the tools, fellow Zambians, of what to look out for. Has there been an acquittal? Has any court of law said individual X, bulldozer, is not guilty? There's no such decision that has come out. Check all the decisions that have come out from the courts of law of late. There's not a single one that has said that this person is innocent of the offense of corruption or whatever financial crime that is. Yes, we can talk about a recent decision by the Constitutional Court on Milingolungu. And what is that decision? The decision is to say we'll not continue with the cases until such time that we as Constitutional Court determine whether or not the immunity agreement was properly before the parties. That is not an acquittal. That does not mean that Mr. Lungu will not be held to account if he is to be held to account for his actions. He is still going to have his day in court. So let's not be premature and listen to these narratives as the people of Zambia, because we're doing ourselves a disfavor. We're giving ourselves BP. This over things which are far from even being ready for conclusion. It's because we are too information hungry. We are listening to some of these narratives on social media too much. It's a good platform, but we must learn to sieve the information that comes across. And we as experts are telling you that there has not been any acquittal. The game is far from being over for any one of these cases that have been commenced recently. In fact, they're just in their infancy. So I can go on. I can go on, actually. I'm very passionate about this.
Definitely. Let's get to continue engaging the public viewers that are watching right about now. So we can have comments coming through so that our guest can respond to whatever issues that have been raised in the commentary box. And apart from that, we can have our studio also people that have joined us in the studio to come through and have their say, or they can have they can come through and tell us what their sentiment is. Our director, if we can have messages coming through or coming in so that we can give chance to our guests to respond to so many people that have joined us this particular evening. As we are waiting for that, maybe Honorable, let's bring it back. I would love to bring you back to the government gazette. That was the government gazette notice that was number 183 of 23rd March 2012. the Minister of Justice is responsible for the portfolio functions and statutory bodies and institutions. Now, in the start of this interview, you mentioned of different line ministries that the Minister of Justice works with, and also there are other bodies like you mentioned the Legal Aid Board, you mentioned there's also the Judicial Complaints Commission. Let's talk about the credibility of the people that you as the minister has appointed in these boards, and also the DGs in these boards, because we have seen a precedence being set by previous governments that the people they put in these key positions are people that are not professional, but are instead paying allegiance to the appointing authority. You are now the Minister of Justice. What kind of caliber have you appointed as board chairpersons in these board committees, or in these other committees that are in the Ministry of Justice?
Okay, thank you very much, Lance, for that question. Let me again put it matters in their correct context. That Gazette notice that you referred to was overtaken several times over. Most recently by Gazette Notice 1126, I believe, which realigned the portfolios, 1126 of 2021, which we promulgated just upon forming government. And when the new ministries were created, there had to be realignment of the portfolio functions. Now, the fact that a portfolio function sits under a particular ministry does not entail that the ministry controls that portfolio function. For example, the judiciary is under the care administratively for purposes of budgeting, but not for purposes of administration of their core mandate, which is to deliver justice. So I argue the budget on behalf of the judiciary on the floor of the House, but I have no say on how the judiciary administers its internal processes and even how judgments are delivered. So whilst on the one hand, it is under one of the statutory bodies, or if I may use that term loosely, that is under the care of the Ministry of Justice. That does not entail that I have any say in how it executes its functions. So please, let's not make that mistake. I know there has been a common thread where people have said because the DEC and other law enforcement agencies are under, for example, the office of the president, that it means that the president can tell DEC how to operate its functions. No, there is an overarching constitutional provisions which make those institutions independent. So just as I argue the budget for the judiciary, it doesn't mean that the judiciary lacks independence. The same way, Legal Aid Board is a grant-aided institution which is under my umbrella, so to speak. But I'll argue the budget, I'll prepare the budgets for them, but I do not tell Legal Aid which clients they should get, and so on and so forth. National Prosecutions Authority is equally a grant-aided institution that is under the umbrella of Ministry of Justice, but the DPP enjoys, and the whole NPA enjoys independence and impartiality under the Constitution. So please understand how these institutions operate, and then that will inform the question that you have asked. So in terms of the boards that are under the care of the Ministry of Justice, the NPA board is appointed by myself as the Minister of Justice. We have not yet appointed a new board. We had just recently dissolved it. Likewise, Legal Aid and a couple of others, Zambia Law Development Commission as well, are under the Ministry of Justice. The others that you have asked about, the Anti-Corruption Commission, for example, the board is appointed by His Excellency the President. Are we still there? Sorry, I had a technical glitch there. So the Anti-Corruption Commission, the board is appointed by His Excellency the President. The Judicial Service Commission is appointed by the President. The Judicial Complaints Commission is appointed by the President, subject to ratification by Parliament. Now, to answer your question as to the individuals that have been appointed into these particular institutions, I think there is no doubt that, first of all, you will see that in the last 6 to 7 years or so, the Anti-Corruption Commission did not have it was under the direction of an acting director general. What does that do? That individual becomes compromised in the sense that they have to look out for the interests of their appointing authority because they are in an acting position. Because the Director General of the Anti-Corruption Commission enjoys what is known as security of tenure. We have corrected that by appointing a substantive, His Excellency the President has corrected that by appointing a substantive Director General of the Anti-Corruption Commission, subject to ratification of Parliament. What does that do? It gives the strength that the law built into that office back to the office. Now look at the individual that has been appointed. There is no question, no doubt that Gilbert Perry is one of the finest legal practitioners, very aggressive, very incapable of being compromised, that we can possibly select. And look at the balance that has been put there, and this brings a smile to my face. He doesn't work alone. He works with the board and its chairperson. And who do we have as board chairperson designate of the Anti-Corruption Commission? None other than a state counsel. Do you know what it is to be state counsel? You are at the top of the legal profession. You are seen to be one of those luminaries that can bring value to Zambia in terms of practice of the law. We have Musa Mwenye, who is a former Attorney General, Solicitor General of the Republic of Zambia, as board chairperson of the Anti-Corruption Commission. What more do you want? And these individuals have not yet taken office. They are pending ratification. This process has begun. We've just opened the next sitting, this current meeting of Parliament. So we'll see the ratification, God willing, going through very soon. Of course, that's subject to what Parliament itself decides. So, Anti-Corruption Commission, we are in safe hands. Look at the DEC. Again, Mary Chilwa. Who can doubt her track record? She sat there as Financial Intelligence Center head at a very, very difficult time and proved her integrity. She's a child of the DEC, was trained on the original crop of people that were trained when the DEC was just brought on. Without doubt, we are in safe hands there. Who else do you want to ask about? Look at the judiciary. Who has been chosen as head of the judiciary, ratified and now leading the judiciary right from the front, Chief Justice Mumba Malila. You can't even talk about that. That's one of our luminaries in the legal circles. So I believe very firmly that as the New Dawn government, we have demonstrated that people will get their jobs on merit, one. And two, that we want to put in place people that will not be yes men and women. We want to put in place people that will perform for the interests of the people of Zambia. And for me, that is extremely exciting. I think you people out there should be with us and saying, wow, we're seeing great things coming in the near future.
All right, comments there. I can see them coming up. We greatly appreciate our director for those comments that are coming up. Do we have anyone that we can bring live as we get to conclude? Okay, Lance, welcome back, and just take a quick glimpse on the messages that are scrolling down there and those that are flashing there.
All right, maybe we can have Chipindini. We had shifted him to the other segment, so let's have him, and then we can read the messages. Chipindini, hi, how are you doing? Hi, Chipindani, good evening.
You are on mute. Kindly unmute, Mr. Chipindani.
Okay. Can you hear?
You can now.
Hello. Good evening.
Good evening. You can go ahead.
Good evening, Lance. Good evening, Chaza. Good evening, Honorable Haimbe. So I have two quick questions for the Honorable. The first one is, do we have sufficient laws to be able to fight or to be able to tackle the fight against corruption? And if we don't, what is the government doing through the Ministry of Justice to ensure that we have adequate laws that will be able to tackle the fight against corruption? And my second question is, when is the Freedom to Information Bill being introduced in Parliament, or being reintroduced in Parliament, so that it can be enacted into law? As we know, this has been long overdue. It's been going on for quite some time. So we'd like to find out from you, the Honorable Minister, when the Freedom to Information Bill will be tabled in Parliament. I thank you.
All right, thank you, Chipindani. It's great to know that you are part of the program, and it's access to information bill. Thank you so much. Let's have Laura's message, and then we have the minister responding. If we can have Laura. All right, so Laura is saying, good evening, Honorable Haimbe. Thank you for touching on the Public Order Act. My observation is that there are some clauses that are in conflict with the supreme law. I pray those will be looked at critically. Minister Haimbe, quickly attend to these, and then we can wind down the program.
Yes, very quickly, Mr. Chipindani. Yes, we have more than sufficient laws to tackle the fight against corruption. As to whether or not there is need for additional provisions, always, as I said earlier, the law is never static. The law is never static. It is an ever-living sort of thing, if I may call it that. So the laws that are there are in the penal code. That is what the Zambia Police Service rely on when prosecuting any offense. Then you have anti-money laundering provisions and forfeiture of crimes provisions, which the DEC is mandated to administer or enforce, as the case may be. And then you have, for example, the anti-corruption laws specific to the Anti-Corruption Act, which relates to offenses such as abuse of authority of office and etc., similar offenses under the corruption sort of perspective of things. So these three pieces of legislation, they are overarching. So you find, like right now in the current fight, you have a joint investigations team comprised of these three law enforcement agencies, because there's fluidity amongst these provisions of the law. So yes, there are more than sufficient provisions to stand the fight against corruption. Aside from the criminal provisions, we also have an advanced sort of approach in our illegal statute book, which provides for civil recovery of assets that have been illegally or improperly gained, as the case may be. So to answer your question, the long and short of it is yes. Our laws are sufficient. And again, I'll repeat myself, don't fall for this narrative, which is to the effect that the fight is being lost, or that it's sliding in the negative. To the contrary, things are just beginning, and you'll be seeing a lot more traction as we go along. Now, access to information bill. The bill, maybe let me explain how the legislative process goes in terms of from the perspective of the Ministry of Justice. As I said earlier, you have, for example, in this case, the Ministry of Information, which is what we call the instructing ministry. The line ministry will get public sentiment, or it will have a policy position and say, we want to introduce legislation on the floor of the House to deal with a particular aspect, in this case, information by the public from government sources and so on and so forth. So they'll come up with the concept. They can do one of two things. They'll put their concept together and bring it to the Ministry of Justice and say, this is what we want to achieve. This can be done either through a conveyance of the narrative, or through what we call a zero draft. The first draft, which is done by a layman, is the layman's draft. When it's brought to the Ministry of Justice, we clean it up to put it in legal language. Then it goes back to the ministry. Now, before that process is undertaken, there is the need to get consensus from stakeholders on the content, the intended content of the bill. So this zero draft will be taken at some point to the public for one to gain consensus, or even after we've produced the first draft as the Ministry of Justice, which is to be considered later on in other internal legislative processes. It can go to the stakeholders to ask them their views on what the law says. So, access to information bill. It was brought to the Ministry of Justice initially before the New Dawn government came into power, and ultimately a bill was produced which went through several of the phases and was ready for tabling as far as our colleagues are concerned before that. But when New Dawn came in, we said we want a fresh pair of eyes. We want to make sure that this bill aligns with the aspirations of the New Dawn government, aligns with the aspirations of the people of Zambia. So the Minister of Information took the decision to withdraw the bill. And so it has gone back to the stage when a public consensus, public views are being taken on its content. So as to when it will be brought on the floor of the House, I cannot speculate because we are a service ministry. We work on instructions from our line ministries. It's only when the line ministry has come back and said we are happy with this draft, we'll clean it through, then we start the internal legislative processes. There are about 4 stages that each bill goes through, leading up to it being approved by cabinet for it now to be presented to the floor of the House. The Access to Information Bill, just like the Public Order Act, by the way, is under, I think, the second or so stage when the public are still giving their comments. That will also answer the concern from the one that was on the message there, as to certain provisions of the Public Order Act being in conflict with the supreme law, which is the Constitution of Zambia. We agree entirely, and this is why we are saying as New Dawn government, we want to have those addressed. In fact, the Supreme Court of Zambia pronounced itself on the provision of Section 5 of the current Public Order Act, where it said that, yes, one, there is need for public processions to be regulated in our country because of the greater public interest of safety and security. 2, the Supreme Court said the way the Public Order Act was being administered was unlawful, insofar as the police were able to say, after being given a notification, they will either support or not support that procession that has been proposed. If they don't support, they would leave it be and never give you an alternative date. The Supreme Court has said, no, that is not correct. Police, as the enforcing body, must give an alternative date so that nobody can stop a person from having a procession. There must be a procession held when once notification is given. So those are the aspects that we'll deal with, because when, just like it happened with Christine Mulundika case, when the Supreme Court has given a guidance as to how the law should be couched, then it is imperative for the executive arm of government to give effect to that through the legislature by enacting amendments to the law to deal with the issue that the Supreme Court has dealt with. So I think I've answered both those questions. Thank you.
Right. Thank you so much, Honorable there. Director, would like to find out if there's anyone that we can give chance who would like to join us. If not, any message that we have not read out as we get to prepare our exit, because time is not our best ally. Honorable, as we conclude, generally or summatively, what would we say of the Ministry of Justice? Do we see, because like you have explained, some sectors would like to bring in some perception that the ministry is not doing enough, but summatively, are we seeing confidence of the people being brought as you deliver as Ministry of Justice?
Well, of course, I would hate to give a self-assessment because I don't think that's how leadership is supposed to be. But to your question as to what we are seeing going forward, in fact, I would say that we are doing all that we can to meet the aspirations of the people of Zambia as a service ministry that's there to create an enabling environment. As for the work of law enforcement agencies, the judiciary and so on and so forth, that is not within my control as Minister of Justice. It is for those independent institutions to do what they must. But speaking from my perspective, looking at what they are doing and what is coming ahead, you see, certainly I'll agree that we are on the right track. The people of Zambia will be seeing the fireworks that they want to see very, very soon. And those that think that they are above the law, that the fight is going nowhere, that it's uncoordinated, and that it will not have results. By the way, even an acquittal is a result in any event, because it's a process that we are looking at. In law enforcement, we do not, or in the practice of the law, we do not talk about the ultimate result. We talk about the process. Did this person get a fair hearing before the law? So if there's an acquittal, well and good. The ultimate aim is to ensure that the law is served blindly, and certainly we are seeing those matters coming up as the trials of these cases start taking place. By the way, trials are public affairs, so you and I will be able to go into court and listen to the evidence as these cases go before the courts of law. So I'm very, very confident that we are doing the right thing. And for those, again, as I said, who believe that they've escaped the long arm of the law, I think a couple of weeks ago there was an idiom from our colleagues, the member-speaking tribe, to the effect that Pungwa tasakamana uchenje shiwanko. So I'll end with that particular idiom.
All right, Honorable Minister of Justice, Mr. Mulambo Haimbe, we are profoundly humbled and highly indebted for this opportunity you've given unto us as Ubuntu channel, and we're looking forward to having you even next time. Thank you so much, and our viewers, our listeners, it's been a great time, and I can see Lance has just come through after that connection problem. But we are so grateful to actually have this show. Do join us next week if you can at the same time. For now, we are saying God bless you. See you next time.